You are listening to Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network. I am your host, Mark, and Ivan Nahem had no choice but to be creative. Born in the 50s, his mother was a graphic designer, and his father played professional baseball. In fact, his dad, Sam, played a big part in the integration of minority players into Major League Baseball. But Ivan was drawn to music. He wanted to play drums, but he was told he had to learn the accordion first. After some less than constructive criticism about his prowess with the instrument, he decided he wasn't musical, and he turned to poetry. After moving cross-country twice, playing with a bunch of bands, he formed the band Ritual Tension. Ivan talks a lot about that and how that led to him playing drums on 2 Swans albums. Ivan is open and honest about all of this, his writing, yoga, and even the loss of his son in 2013. But he's been busy during the past few COVID-tainted years. In addition to releasing a new Ritual Tension album at the beginning of the pandemic, he has recorded and just released a solo album called Crawling Through Grass. It's one of the most unique, in a good way, albums that I've heard in a while. Think ambient punk. Now give Ivan a follow at ivan.nahem or at Ritual Tension on Instagram and Facebook. Pick up Crawling Through Grass via Arguably Music. Follow us at Performance ANX on social media. And you can help us out with a review, a coffee at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety, or by buying yourself something nice at performanceanx.threadless.com. We still have a bunch of shower curtains. Now listen in on the conversation with me and Ivan Nahem on Performance Anxiety, part of Pantheon Podcasts.
All right, then. Okay. Hey, this is Ivan Nahem promoting my new album, Crawling Through Grass by Ivan Nahem Plus Extension, here on Performance Anxiety, chatting to our friend, the superb host, Mark with a C. Mark Sloan, and from Ritual Tension, he also spells it with a C. I like that spelling. Correct way. It's looking good.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, no worries. Yeah.
So
it's great.
There we go. You there?
I'm back. Yeah.
My daughter called and knocked me off the connection. So, and now my
You're
phone.
Now vertical.
let me do this. Hopefully this will.
Okay.
Fix. Let me see. There we go.
There you go.
Kids. I was just talking about them. I was about to brag on them, and now forget it.
Right.
All right. So okay. So you have an idea of how the show goes then. So, which helps me out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, you know that I like to kind of start from the beginning and get your background a little bit and find out how music became so important to you and how you made it a big part of your life. I did obviously do some research, so I know your family is very creative. They've made a living in unusual ways. Like your dad was a professional baseball player.
Right. Among other things, yeah. Are we recording?
Oh yeah.
Now?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad was quite a character. I mean, he was. He played for the Brooklyn Dodgers for 3 days. He played a really good game at the end of the season. And then he walked in on Leo DeRocher, who was, as he used to say, in flagrante with a woman. Oh. And he got traded shortly after that.
Oh, wow.
So then he went to the St. Louis Cardinals. He had a pretty good year there. And then he went into... he volunteered in the Army. He was a leftist, and so his story, actually there's been a lot written about him, and there's a section in a book that just came out about his contributions to the integration of baseball.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so when he was over there he got there after hostilities had ceased, more or less. They knew he was a major league ball player. he was Syrian Jewish, and which was unusual in itself. And then he was also he had passed the bar exam in New York, so he had organizational skills. So they gave him the task of putting together some baseball leagues now in France. Now there were baseball leagues happening in Germany too. General Patton sponsored this one team called the Red Circlers, who had 8 major leaguers in them.
Wow.
My dad, on the other hand, said, okay, I'm going to bring in some black players. Yeah. And so he brought in Leon Day from the Negro Leagues and Willard Brown and just this ragtag team. And they won. Sam was a pitcher, and they won the league in France. And then they were playing this lily white team from Germany, and they had a 5-game series, and they ended the series in Nuremberg Stadium, where Hitler had given all his speeches.
Wow.
And this was the first time this was before Jackie Robinson. Okay. So this was the first time a lot of GIs were seeing black and white players play together. And actually I have this book that Peter Dreyer wrote called Baseball Rebels. And can I read just?
Absolutely.
I knew you were probably going to ask me about this, so
please do.
So the teams returned to Nuremberg for the deciding game on September 8th, 1945. Nahem started for the OISE team in front of over 50,000 spectators. After the Red Circlers scored a run and then loaded the bases with 1 out in the 4th inning, Nahem took himself out and brought in Bob Keane, who got out of the inning without allowing any more runs and completed the game. The OISE team won 2-1. The Sporting News adorned its report on the final game with a photo of Nahem. So, yeah, so it was all to get, and he was a smart guy. He had a great sense of humor, and one of the ways in which he influenced me, though, was more in terms of he was a real literary guy. So, I was reading Shakespeare when I was before I was a teenager, and we were reading it around the table and stuff. I mean, it sounds almost pretentious, but my mother was a commercial artist, what now we would call a graphic artist. And so there was a lot of, and there was always music. My dad loved classical music and Arabic music, actually. So there was a lot of that going on in the house. But in terms of my own musical background, I did want to play drums early. And the story goes that my mom took me to a music store, which advertised that they had music lessons. And they said, well, you can play the drums, but first you have to learn, it's not a real instrument. So first you have to learn the accordion. Oh. And they put me in this dark room with this old German lady and an accordion.
Oh, God.
I said, I don't think I'm going to go back there.
Oh my God.
And then I had some discouraging thing. People told me I was off key singing and stuff. And, musician people talk about having an ear or not. So I decided that I wasn't musical. And I did take guitar lessons and I, when I was like 12 for a while, but I think I had a shitty guitar. So, so my hero, my first real hero was Bob Dylan. And I really wanted to be Bob Dylan, but I knew I wasn't musical. So, he was hanging out with Allen Ginsberg and poets and stuff. So I was writing poetry when I was much younger than that. So, but that sort of reinforced it, that I wanted to become a poet. And so I wrote constantly, and through high school, I went to Berkeley High School out in California and saw a lot of music, always loved music, always, even from like a couple decades ago, I bought a the big hits of 1962. This will date me there. You'll know that I'm not, I know I look 32, but I'm,
yes.
You know,
a
little bit older
spry
than
32
that,
at that too.
What?
A spry 32.
A spry 32. But like the top hits of 1962 were all really like Duke of Earl, Soldier Boy, great songs, you know. And so when the Beatles came along and the Stones and all that, of course I was way into that. Actually, the first time I heard Bob Dylan, I hated it. I told my mom, he sounds like an old man. That was when he was doing the folk music. And she said, you know, well, there's a tradition like Woody Guthrie, like listen to the words and stuff. So, you know, she turned me on actually in a way awesome. To Bob Dylan. So music was really central to me, and also that sort of outsider poet thing, you know, that like, you know, Dylan and Lou Reed, Patti Smith, and all of those people were huge for me. Yeah. But I didn't really have I didn't get over my insecurity about music enough to get on stage until punk rock came along. Oh, and okay. So that was. Well, I tried to be in a band I was in a band for a while in 76. I came out to New York, and my friend John Griffin and his friend Wade Ripka and I decided we would have a band, and they tried to teach me bass, but Wade was not a good teacher. Yeah. And he was like, I mean, come on, you're lagging.
Oh, you know? Gosh. Was this crop?
No, this was like a few years before that.
Oh, the Situations?
It was nothing. We didn't even have a band. I mean, you know, I decided to go back to California. So I went back to California. And one night I was at the Mabuhay Gardens and the old Mab. And I was watching a band called The Offs, and with Don Vinyl, singer. He was just a great guy. And the drummer was just all over the place. I mean, he was just horrible. I think he was known to be like taking lewds and all of that. And I don't think that's conducive to drumming so much. Probably not. Yeah. Probably not. So
we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with the stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better, because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Try doing that in person. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself, because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to Performance Anxiety listeners: you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. That's betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
The drums were like falling off the stage, basically, and he was as well. So I thought, hey, I think I can do this. You know, I think at least I can keep a beat, even though I'm not musical. Yeah. So I bought a Ludwig Silver Sparkle, and that was on sale and I was on stage at the Mabuhay within 3 weeks with the Situations. Wow. These were some teenage girls. They were 17 and 15, and their friend who was 17, Michael, and they were really, really flamboyant. and brilliant. I mean, Janet Sauter was really a brilliant person, and Janet dyed my hair before our first gig, and silver, dyed my hair silver, and wow. I did have hair at that point, and I was quite a bit older than them, but so I was sort of like paternal, the padre of the group, wow. And I really had to learn to drum quick because we got really popular really fast. I mean, wow. We were like the hot ticket in town for within like 2 months, but people would come and, you know, that was hard. Talk about performance anxiety. I mean, somebody booked us. They booked us in a sit down concert at San Francisco Art Institute, like 500 seat sit down audience to see us. And we were the only thing on the bill, and it was free. And I mean, you know, so I took lessons from Tony Hotel. This woman played with No Mercy. And I think I exonerated myself that night, and we were getting pretty good. And then a lot, you know, the things that happened with bands and stuff, and so that went by the wayside. I often think that I wish I could go back and really try to keep that band together, because it really was fun, and you know, punk was there, but post-punk was starting to happen, and I was listening to Joy Division and Birthday Party and those bands, and I was like, I want to be in a heavier band, you know, a band like that, rather than this. The Situations were sort of like a punk, less apt version of B-52s. Oh, okay. Kind of. You can imagine that kind of thing. Yeah. So, you know, we were real colorful. Teresa, the organ player, ended up marrying Jello Biafra for a brief time. Jello was my housemate for a while. Oh wow! Okay. You know, it was a wonderful scene to be part of. Really, I loved that period, the punk period in San Francisco, and so when that band imploded, my brother's 11 years younger than me, and he was messing around with guitar. And so I said, let's start playing together. And so we started playing together. And then two guys who were sort of our roadies for a while in the Situations, or, you know, they had cars anyway and helped us move equipment, were Mark C. and Tom Payne. And so they joined the band. So yeah, that was the band Crop.
Okay. So, and what was the sound of Crop, you know, coming from the Situations? Was it a big style shift?
Oh yeah, huge. Yeah. It was, I mean, really in a way it was like early Live Skull. If people know Live Skull, because those two guys went on to become Live Skull. Yeah. But my brother always had a fairly individual style with guitar. I mean, he no guitar solos or anything like that, and really scrappy kind of guitar stuff. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we were really influenced by like the bands I was talking about. Like we did a cover of The Fall various times, and cool. And we played around in San Francisco, but after a while we felt like it really wasn't happening there for us, and so we decided to come to New York, and the
entire band followed you guys.
Well, my brother by that time had left the band, so it was just Mark and Tom and I came out here, and we were looking for a replacement for Andrew in New York. Mark got an apartment on Great Jones Street, and we had auditions there for guitar players. Okay. And we auditioned a couple guys who would go on to stuff. One was Vernon Reed. And
wow.
I loved playing with him. He had a great audition, and we also auditioned Norman Westberg, and they didn't go for these guys. And I was like,
wow,
really?
That's wild.
And instead to their credit, actually, in some ways, I think Tom really wanted to have a woman in the band. Okay. And yeah, okay, that's a good idea. But we did get this woman in the band, and I thought she was terrible. And so there were other things too, like we couldn't think of a name for the band, and I'm really was the wordsmith, even though I was the drummer. So I'd come up with all these lists of band names, and they toss them around and then say, nah, not really.
Oh wow!
And I was like, come on, guys. Gosh. So
and Crop is the one they settled on, huh?
Well, no, Crop was the one we were dissatisfied with. Oh, so that was what we were. And the last time we actually played under Crop, and under Blase Decay was another name. Oh, wow. Yeah, but when we came out here, we were basically nameless. So I decided, okay, this is not going well. Tom was a difficult person for me, and so I decided to leave and form a band with my friend from Brooklyn Bay Ridge, John Griffin, who's the same guy, the guy I had done in that first kind of band that never got anywhere. Right. And so now we're going to form another band that gets nowhere. So we formed this other band, and I called up Norman Westberg because I had his number, and so the three of us, I was drumming and John was playing. John was a drummer, but he's just an all-around musician. So he took up bass, or he was playing bass and singing. And Norman wasn't a singer, so he was just a guitar player. Right. So who would go on to play with Swans. So we went in and did one recording session with the guys from the Nails. The Kaufman brothers, who had a studio. So we recorded, I think, like about 5 songs with them. Okay. But we didn't put them out. They were just sort of like demos. And then we did, we needed to have, John felt like he didn't want to sing and play bass. Okay. So we auditioned all these singers and came up with nothing. And so then one day I just said, well, I'm writing a lot of the lyrics in these songs, and I don't know if I can sing, but give me a shot. Right. And so I did Edge of Night, our song Edge of Night, and they were like, yeah, works. Let's go. Wow. So now we just need a drummer. So then we went through 20 drummers, but we did find James Lowe, who's really I was a punk rock drummer, kind of, or a very basic, like Mo Tucker and Nick Knox were like my idols on the drum kit. But James he was into punk funk. He really anchored hard drumming, like you knew where that beat was. Yeah. And so we went into we played around some more. We went into Noise New York studio, and there were some drugs involved somewhere, and interpersonal weirdness, and John decided to leave the band, and in the middle of the sessions. Oh, so wow. I took 2 of the songs and put them out under the name Ivan X, Edge of Night, and Telltale Heart.
Venus in blue jeans, Venus in furs, Venus the Darkness draws roots on the wall.
And then by then my brother had moved to New York, so we started playing together. We moved in together in the Lower East Side and started playing, and we would eventually become Ritual Tension.
Okay,
so that's the next
phase.
But one thing I do want to say about Carnival, so the band that I formed, I don't know whether I said the name, was Carnival Crash with John and Norman. And a few years ago, when I was re-immersing myself in music, I relocated those master tapes for both those sessions.
Wow.
I had them both converted. One was like the 1/4-inch tape Ampex and from the Kaufman brothers, had them converted, and that, which was fun too. I mean, the one we did with the Ampex was with Tony Maimone, which was really cool to be in his studio. And, and do that. Anyway, and then we remixed them with Michael Young from Alice Donut, and we put out, and Obelisk Records put out an album. It is a Happy Man, Carnival Crash, and I think it's really interesting stuff. So
yes,
it's out there.
It's really cool. I got a chance to listen to it when I had Norman on a few months ago, and it was just, it's really cool.
Oh, cool. I didn't know Norman was on it. I didn't see him on his name. That's great.
Yeah, he was on a few months ago. That's the question I always have when somebody just says that they found these tapes. Where were they? I mean, did you have them in your possession the entire time? Did you know where they were, or did you just stumble across a box of 2-inch tape and like, what is this? Oh, wow, it's Carnival Crash.
No, I knew I had them. I knew I had them in storage somewhere. And I mean, I've held on to some of that stuff through, like we moved everything to Ireland in the 2000s, because my wife is from there. And, so I had them with me, but I wasn't really paying that much attention. You have all this old stuff and I mean, when the story fast forwards to the 2000s, I wasn't really, I was doing some music, but I didn't think I was going to come back and do career kind of stuff. Right. But I always was fond of that material. And I think it's interesting, Norman did play with Swan. I mean, that's where he's been for decades, but I think it shows a different aspect of his guitar playing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
you end up forming Ritual Tension, which is really good. I love the I Live Here, the opener on that, Social Climber. I like that a lot. That was really cool.
Slick as butter. Kick that sucker. Hang on to that ladder. Social climber. She molds the budget for sweaters. Colors have such symmetry. I like cooking and acting and yoga. What a geometric canvas. I love art. I'm a neon giraffe. Caress me. But what to be? Woo-hoo. Go. To the limelight limbo area. Caviar in the cemetery. Beef up those veins.
That was like our most real punk rock kind of song, really. I mean,
and you were ahead of your time. I mean,
yeah. And what's interesting is we'll talk, I'm sure, about my involvement with yoga, but in that song where I'm describing the Social Climber, I kind of say she's into music and art and yoga.
Yes, I noticed that.
Being kind of sarcastic at that point, it would later become a career for me.
Yeah.
So
it's also kind of pressure of the influx of social media and people climbing their way through with, I mean, I'm sure it happened normally in through other channels in the 70s, 80s, 90s, but it's accelerated over the past 20 years.
Now the word social is almost radioactive.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
So Social Climber. Yeah. I would love to do that song again sometime, but yeah.
Oh man, that's all. Yeah. That would, you could have a whole different angle on it now.
Yeah.
But so that came out in 86, but in 86 you were also appearing on Swans Greed and Holy Money albums.
Yeah, that was a very odd interlude in my life because I was Andrew and I had formed Ritual Tension. We had had Claire Lawrence Slater on bass and Michael Gio on drums on our first album, and then they went different ways, and so Mike Shockley and Mark Sloan came into the band.
Okay. And
really, really wonderful rhythm section. These guys are really, really smoking. So I'm just setting this up that in Ritual Tension, we were kind of a democratic band. Like we made all the decisions together and nobody was really in charge. And so it was kind of a shock for me to start working for Michael Gira, which is what it kind of felt like to be in that band.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about socks for a second. Why not? It's a music podcast. But I tried a pair of socks from Boldfoot and loved them. I've only worn them once because my kids have stolen them. So in my household, that's the best endorsement I can give. And I guess it's fitting because the design I chose was Jailbird. The design I chose was Jailbird. I might keep that in. The socks are 100% American made and 5% of all proceeds go to veteran charities. It makes sense seeing that Boldfoot is a family and veteran owned company. They have a huge variety of styles. So check out boldfoot.com and buy some of the best socks you've ever slapped on your feet. And help veterans while you're at it. That's boldfoot.com.
Yeah. And he's legendary for this. And Norman and I hang out, and I know from Norman that Michael's been a bit contrite at any rate about the way he treated people, but he was very abrasive in some ways. And when I look back, because of the podcast and this stuff, I've been thinking more about it. And when I look back on that period, I really love the rehearsals. The rehearsals were so fun. And except there was one time where Michael said to me, "Hit the drum harder. You have to hit it harder." And I was beating the shit out of this drum, the snare. And I came down so hard and I hit my middle finger on the rim. Ooh. And it swole up like a fucking orange. And so I had to go to the hospital. But that time wasn't so fun. But I was coming up, I was enjoying putting beats on that wall of sound, and it was really obviously being in a small room with that band was crazy. And I don't know. We did one demo at Wharton Tears studio that went really well, I thought.
Oh, awesome.
And
I love Wharton.
And we were grooving along. And then, now I think I misinterpreted this, but I think part of the problem was Michael's lack of communication skills was that he decided to have another drummer join us. And like I said, I was kind of I was a self-taught later in life drummer, and I'd never gone to music school. 5/8 and stuff like that wasn't really in my vocabulary that much. I mean, I'd taken some drum lessons, to be honest, but he brought on in Ronaldo, and he didn't really tell me why. And I thought, okay, this is how he's ousting me from the band.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I was like, okay, there's another drummer, and he's really schooled and he's really good. And what am I doing here? And so this was like 2 weeks before we were going to go in and record Greed, what became Greed. And so I was kind of unnerved by that. And then we went into the studio, and I'm not proud of this, but Michael wanted to use a click track. And I'd never done that before. And he would listen, of course, everybody's listening. And the moment I strayed from the beat, he'd come over the cans and say, you're not on the beat. And I was just like, it was the only time I've been in a studio where I really didn't feel comfortable. And we had recorded with Martin BC and BC Studios, and we had a great time recording as Ritual Tension. And here was a band where I was basically working for this guy. And I mean, one of the reasons that Norman had, of course, recommended me to be in the band, and he had said that we'd be touring Europe. And I really wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And, but I just couldn't take those sessions. And so I quit during the sessions and just said, Ronaldo, you play. So and the funny thing is that I haven't really gone back and listened to that. I keep thinking, okay, you have to go listen to Greed and at least try to figure out what's mine and what's, because I know I created most of those beats because it was just right on the eve of our recording. But that was pretty much it. And later, Michael was I later saw Swans once, and they had two drummers. So I don't actually think he was trying to oust me.
Wow.
But who knows? But anyway, that was the Swans episode in my life. And a couple of years ago, a guy, Nick Soulsby, was writing a book about Swans, an oral history. And
cool.
There were other drummers that had almost the same exact experience as I did. He's been through like about 25 drummers. So.
I know. I could probably just do a whole podcast show based on drummers of Swans.
Swans drummers. Yeah. Maybe I'll do that podcast.
There you go.
That's my career now. Swans drummers.
Your whole career distilled into a podcast of Swans drummers.
Oh my gosh. But I will say though that I really admire Michael's tenacity, that he just, there was nothing going to stand in his way of doing that music. And that's all he devoted himself to. And I look back on my life and I tried to have a job and all this stuff. And it got in the way, it gets in the way, so
I know what you mean.
I have to kudos to him on that level.
So how did you guys come up with the name Ritual Tension in the first place?
Well, we were thinking performance anxiety. No, but it actually does sort of connect to that in that, well, there's two things. I was really immersing myself in Native American history and life. And I went out to stay with my sister for a while in '84. And I think I had already named the band and all that, but I'd read Black Elk Speaks. That was kind of like the Bible to me. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful book. And the rituals that he described in that. And I was thinking, like in our culture, we don't really have, there are people who go to church and all that, but people gathering around a fire and playing music together, that's a ritual.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we're doing in these clubs, that we go there communally. And I also felt like I was studying shaman stuff, and shamans usually were drummers and and poets, basically.
Okay.
And I kind of felt like that's where I come from. I get up in front of an audience and I try to hypnotize and then try to bring people into my world in that way with rhythm and with meaning, the meaning of words. And but every time you do it, every time it comes around, it's tense. Mm-hmm. You know, there's also the ritual meaning that something comes back around. You know, it's cyclical in some way.
Okay.
And there's a tension there. And you also find that in music, where, you know, music builds a tension and then, you know, tension release. That's a basic concept in music. So that was my thinking about it, that there's this tension that we go through every time. And every time we go on stage, we have to deal with that performance anxiety and have to, you know, transcend it somehow.
Right.
And so that was my thinking behind that.
So the band didn't last. I mean, it lasted a few years, and you guys did a really unique cover of the Eagles' Hotel California.
Standing in the corner, wins the horizon. 7 women on my mind. On a dark desert highway, cool breeze in my hair, a warm smell of the colitas rising up through the air. Up ahead in the distance, I see a shimmering light. My head grows heavy and my sight grows dim.
How did you pick that song to cover?
Well, my feeling about covers is that you have to the basic. What I was looking for in covers is a song that you really like the bone. It's like renovating a house, right?
Okay.
You like the bones of the house. I mean, the words to that song, and my brother was born in California. I was born in New York, and we moved to the Bay Area when I was 5 or almost 5. And California has a distinct spell. You know, it does lull you into. I mean, I don't know, the whole mythos of California.
Yeah,
you know,
I know what you mean.
So I thought, okay, this song. It has these words. It has really powerful music. I'm not really. I mean, I think the Eagles, you know, pop music and stuff like that, it can be appealing on a certain level, but and you know, I mean, it's a classic song, but it wouldn't be a song that I would say, oh, this is one of my favorite songs,
right? As
it is. And then we took lines like they stab it with their steely knives, but they still can't kill the beast. It's like that kind of sums up California. and so we took that into the outro for it. And one thing about our version about that I go back and forth with is it has this really long intro where I'm reciting some of the key phrases from 60s rock, like excuse me while I kiss the sky.
Yeah.
And behind they've nailed the curtains, they're getting ready for the feast from Desolation Row. So I recite those lines, and also William Blake's a poem by William Blake, which is not coming to me at the moment, but and Andrew's doing this thing with the guitar, really abrasive. And I was thinking, in a way, it used to bug me. I think I had a girlfriend who said, how come that song takes so long to get going? And so then I thought, oh shit, you know, but one person's opinion, and I can understand that opinion, but when I listened to it, a few months ago, I was thinking, this is sort of early noise music.
Okay. Interesting.
You know? And then I think we do get into the song. By the outro, we're rocking the hell out of it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think it's an interesting piece that we did, and we released it as an EP.
Yeah, I liked it a lot just because it's so different from the original. I love it when a band will do that. Just take a song instead of doing a by the numbers cover. They make it their own.
Yeah, this was definitely not. It didn't sound like Eagles.
No, it didn't. Well, so Ritual Tension ended up dissolving in like 1990, I believe, right?
Yeah, we started in '82, and I got together with Alice Janice, and we had my son in. We had a son in 1988, and so I was feeling at that point like Ritual Tension. Alice was in Sex Pod, and they were getting a lot of attention, and I thought, well, I'm really a writer, and I think I'll work on my novels and see where that goes, and work on other stuff. And I just felt like doing that. I also had, becoming a parent like that with, I have a daughter too from a previous marriage to that.
Okay.
But, I didn't really grow up with her. So having a son, I really wanted to devote myself to that a lot. And I was working at the New York Stock Exchange, and that's a story as well. But so I kind of dissolved. I guess it was probably me that dissolved it. But so we decided to call it a day, and had a last gig in 1990, I think. And,
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you just backed away from music completely at that point.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we had done 2 studio albums. We'd done Hilly Crystal of CBGB. I mean, at our peak, we were headlining on Saturday night at CBGB's.
Oh, wow.
And Hilly loved us, and he thought we could be the next Talking Heads.
Oh,
and
man.
So he actually was forming a record company, CBGB Records, and they partnered with Celluloid Records to put out our album Blood of the Kid live at CBGB's. So we had a substantial body of work by then, but yeah, I thought I would get more into my writing, but and I guess I never was. I think basically what I am is a poet, and I was never happy with the long form stuff that I wrote. So
okay.
And it's really hard to get somewhere as a writer if you don't have a novel,
right?
Just even short stories are hard. I mean, I published in lots of journals and all of that, but it, and poetry. I mean, after music seemed, I don't know. I always wanted to see music and words together, and so. In the 2000s, when I was starting to teach yoga and all that, I was still writing songs. I picked up the guitar. I was writing songs, and we did some recordings. My son played bass on the recordings with, strangely enough, with the Cucumbers, who are a Hoboken band who were sort of in the Hoboken sound scene.
Yeah.
Our wives became really good friends because both of our sons were named Jesse, and they happened to be playing together. And And so we ended up for a while in the 90s. Dina and Alice and John were doing a kids band called Over the Moon, and I contributed vocals and wrote a bunch of the songs as well.
Okay.
And so we were doing a kiddie band for the 90s. And then in the 2000s, I recorded songs with them that someday I hope to re-record. And so, yeah, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is I didn't completely leave music, but I was trying to swim out in another direction.
Right. So
that was that period.
Yeah. So you still had it in you. You're still doing stuff, but it was not your main focus by any means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
And at what point, we mentioned this a little earlier, but at what point did yoga become a big part of your life?
Wow. In a way, I can go all the way back to my teens where, I had mentioned earlier that I was into Allen Ginsberg.
Mm-hmm.
Through Ginsberg, I got into Gary Snyder and Alan Watts. And Alan Watts wrote a book called The Way of Zen. So when I was 15, I read this book about Zen, Buddhism, and was fascinated by it and became really interested in the Eastern philosophies.
Okay.
And in my teenage years, a friend of mine and I, actually a couple friends of mine and I, this is how weird Berkeley High was. We got into following an Indian guru named Meher Baba, who said not only that was he a guru, he was a messiah.
Oh, wow.
And so we went to India for a week, but he had already died. And anyway, I ended up thinking that he wasn't the God man he said he was. And that kind of immunized me against the obedient disciple kind of thing. That's not my thing. But I always, I don't know. I think the basic question of life is, why am I me? Why am I conscious? Who am I? Mm-hmm. Deep down. And I think it was beneficial to me that my parents were communists and atheists because I had a blank slate with religion. And so later on, I got into Native American stuff. But with that, after immersing myself for some years in it and going to sweat lodges and stuff like that, I kind of felt like I'm never going to be an Indian. That's not my tribe, really. Right. So I came back to New York and so there was always some of that going on with me. I'm also a skeptic, so I'm not like a woo-woo, a new age person, right? California person. That stuff doesn't work for me. I don't even really believe in astrology, for example, or chakras, for example. But I mean, in I think 2004, my wife wanted to give me a massage gift certificate for. She wanted to give me a gift certificate for a massage, and there was a yoga studio where they were doing that. And I glanced into the rooms, and I thought, you know what? I never really tried this physical yoga stuff. I know the philosophy and all that, but maybe I'll give that a shot. And I fell in love with it. I loved it. I mean, the way a class would just tranquilize you, and by the end you were in a different space and it seemed to me that it was so organic that the movement and the breath would just bring you into this space. And I had some, I had a teacher who was playing Bob Dylan and stuff, and his playlist was pretty good, although later on, I came to think, and later on he came to think too, because he was an Iyengar teacher, that you don't play music in class. But so I kind of just fell in love with it, and within a year, I remember at the beginning, my wife said, "Are you are you going to, you should maybe teach this? And I was like, don't be ridiculous. I'm in my 50s. I can't, teach this. Right. But I really did find a place doing it. And so when we moved to Ireland, back to the County Longford, where Helen's from, I started teaching. I just rented a hall, Temperance Hall, actually, is what it was called.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from the old days. So the Temperance Hall was now offering yoga, and so I started teaching. I eventually got my 500 hours teaching certificate, and I really threw myself into it. I still do yoga. I retired from teaching it a couple of years ago. Okay. Just sort of to bring my practice home and to just do it for myself more than, when you're teaching something, you're always thinking about the teaching of it when you're doing it and that kind of thing. So, but it has given me a lot. And it's funny because my mother, she died in 1974, but we actually had, we had a really good relationship, but she did want me to become a teacher because I was into literature. She thought I would become a professor, and she was disappointed I wasn't on that path, but I didn't want to be in academia my whole life. So, but it's funny that eventually, Mom was right.
Yeah.
I was a teacher.
She usually is. I found that out. So what brought music back to the forefront for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I became aware there was a fan page on Facebook for Ritual Tension.
Okay,
and it turned out to be this guy Greg Bielski, and I got to know Greg, and he's like a noise artist, noise guy, musician from Pittsburgh, and. So he, and after we got to know each other, he said, I have these soundtracks, just abstract soundscape kind of things. Okay. Would you mind putting some words to them? And so I thought, yeah, why not? And I had a series of poems that were kind of, the form of them was to take the definite article, and put a noun or a whole phrase in front of it. So the kiss, the drum, the machine, that kind of stuff, and try to make it make sense. Okay. So I like working with constraints, and so I had this series of poems. So I thought, okay, I'll put that to Greg's soundscapes. And then I thought, you know what, let's make this a little more musical. I'll bring in samples, I'll bring in musicians. So I thought, you know what, I'll bring my Ritual Tension guys in. So Andrew is on a couple tracks, Mike Shockley's on a track, Mark Sloan's on a track. And so that's where I got the name Extension, because it's their extension. Right. We were tension together. I like that. And so we decided to call it Extension, that project. And we did an album called The Kiss that I released in 2017. Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah. It's kind of bizarre stuff, but the one thing that was, one thing I'm excited about The Kiss is that it really translated to the stage. Oh, some of the pieces, and you wouldn't think so, on the surface, but right. Some of the songs are really fun to do, like The Jobs, where I'm just reciting all the names of these jobs. What I would do is write those jobs, like the sluggard bartender or something, yeah. And I go around the audience and hand them these cards, and so that's their job. Oh, that's cool. It's kind of fun stuff. Yeah. So that started getting me back in. And then I started going to clubs more, and I started feeling like, you know what? I love the sound of a drum. I love rock. I love music, rock music. Yeah. and let's get the band together.
We're going to get the band back together.
Get the fucking band back together. So Andrew, my brother, had he must have been visited by a spell of sanity, and he said, "No, I ain't doing this." I don't know what came over the lad, but he didn't want to join in. But he's done our graphics and that stuff. But so Mark and Mike and I got together again, and we started playing. We played for a couple years. Mike had moved down to Delaware, so we recorded down in Delaware. We went and rehearsed a bunch of times in Delaware, or a couple times, and we did an album that we released in 2019, or I think it was actually released in 2020, but it was released 2020, and we were playing out. We played. At first, I was sort of bringing them on stage when I was doing the Kiss material, and I do the songs that they had done with me, and then we just started playing as Ritual Tension, and we actually had a record release party all set and all of that, and then COVID came along, and like it's done for so many things, it just wiped that away. Yeah. And there we were. So we released It's Just the Apocalypse, It's Not the End. And I'm proud of that album. I think there were things we were able to do now that we didn't do back then. And I'm much more concentrated on my singing. And we brought in Zeph China, who plays with Peter Murphy. He's an old friend from Hoboken. Yeah. Oh, cool. He's done a couple of the songs. And meanwhile, I'd gone through some stuff with the fact that my son, who was a musician, a bass player like his mom, Alice, had he OD'd on alcohol. And
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, when he was 25. And so that had happened in 2013. And I'd actually had a magazine online, a yoga teacher magazine, and I just somehow associated it with, because I had to announce it on the magazine and stuff like that. Oh. I kind of associated it. There were other reasons too. I wasn't making any money off it, and so I kind of, for a while, was that was kind of before Greg got hold of me. So so I'd gone through that stuff, and you, as a parent yourself, I know that can be a bit devastating. Yeah, not a bit devastating.
Yeah. Completely.
Completely.
I'm so sorry. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is people say, "I hope you heal," and all of that, and that's not really what happens. I mean, you don't really heal from it. The wound is always open, but you do move on with your life. Of course, you have to, and you have to begin to be able to find some joy in things, and to think that Jesse Sandwich, Nahem was a gorgeous comet that flew across the sky, and I was honored to know him, and so there's that,
So the album that came out, it's just the Apocalypse, It's Not the End. It's definitely Ritual Tension for sure, but like you said, it seems like the band kind of, I mean, you said it perfectly. You're able to do things that you weren't able to do early on. I like the covers, Manic Depression and Shaken Street. They're really cool. I May Have Been Wrong. Again, another strong opener with I'm Loving It.
Everybody here got that one true God, and they're loving it. All the hocus pocus through the keyhole.
I really enjoyed this album.
All right. That's good to hear. I don't think we got enough play with it because of the circumstances,
Right.
But
Yeah.
but it's there, and yeah, I think it was really interesting that we went back and forth about whether we needed to have a guitar on it, and when we played live, it was just drums, bass, and vocals, and it was really kind of fun to get so deep into. I mean, Mark has such a strong, deep, guttural sound, and he did some guitar overdubs, and we have Zeph on violin and stuff. But it was interesting to really pare it down like that and to just work with voice and all that. And yeah, I it was fun doing that. Like I said about Hotel California with the MC5 song. Mark is a big. I was always much more. The MC5 was eclipsed for me by the Stooges. I was a complete Stooges fan, but so Mark wanted to do an MC5 song, and I really loved the lyrics to Shaken Street, and that it was really fun to sing that song, and yeah, it was. I think we made it a different song. Our own.
After that, you've gone completely in a different route with the latest release that you've got, Crawling Through Grass.
Yeah,
that is a completely different tack. It's interesting to hear. I guess the only way to say it would be like a punk kind of guy doing ambient-ish stuff. It seems so like two genres that just shouldn't meet anywhere, but they meet in Ivan.
And Andrew is a big part of it too, my brother, and he said at one point, he was grammatically incorrect, but he said, "We are the wrongest people to be doing this."
I think I like that perfectly.
Yeah, I think that describes it. Yeah, it was actually Greg that came up with the idea, and on the cover, I'm name checking him for that. He said, "Well, you did yoga. Why don't you do a yoga album?" And I have to be respectful. I understand that there really is no such thing as yoga music apart from something they call kirtan, could and ragas maybe,
okay.
But so I didn't want to say this is a yoga album, but it does. The ritual tension stuff and most of the stuff I've been involved with music is really that male energy, that testosterone, that male energy, kind of, and the ritual tension was really the grittiness, trying to get to the grittiness of living in New York and all that, like I Live Here, the first album. But that doesn't really encompass all that I am as a person and as a storyteller. But I did have a dilemma with this album, which was that I did when I taught yoga classes, I did have music in most of the time because I do think it helps you create the spell of a class. Now it's controversial in yoga whether you should have music. Sometimes I did classes with no music, but when I did have music, one of the things I wanted to do was not have a lot of words, and especially not have English words, because I don't want people focusing on lyrics, and I want them to be more into just the feeling of it.
That makes sense.
So the dilemma for me was that mostly I'm a poet, as I said. So, but I have in the last. When I came back to music this time, I said to myself, I really want to learn music. I want to go back and do the fundamentals. And theory, as it turns out, can really, really be helpful.
Go figure. But he slags it, but man,
People have been slagging, from punk rock, and it's like, oh, you fucking music nerds and all that. But no, knowing what a scale is can really help you put this shit together.
Yeah.
And,
Go figure.
Yeah, go figure. So I've been devoting myself more to that. I learned actually Norman turned me on to Ableton Live, so I wanted to do my own engineering and pretty much Mark C. I took some of the songs to Mark C. to help with the engineering, but yeah, I kind of felt like, how can I tell my stories without so many words? And how can I paint pictures? Now, I wanted to do something that had kind of I wasn't making this for, you put on the album and then you have a yoga class. It wasn't, that's something that in some ways I would like to experiment with doing at some point, but I did want it to have the arc of a yoga class. I kind of want this album to be yoga adjacent.
Okay.
Have an arc where you build up kind of just getting into it slowly, and then it gets a little more intense, and then it gets intense, and then there's the wind down. And this is what happens with Crawling Through Grass, I think, is like it's so the first song, Only Waking, is just sort of waking up, and going through. And then the exaltation of nothing, getting more into this abstract space head kind of place, and so it was interesting to me to take the words out of most of it. I couldn't entirely do that, and I have it's almost like found collage words in it as well, and different elements like that. But it's not. It's not a Ritual Attention post-punk album. No.
Your wife does make some kind of vocal appearances on there, somewhat reluctantly. If I'm understanding that right.
That's what I wrote that in the PR bio. I showed it to her the other night, and she smirked as she usually will. But she jocularly says she's going to sue me for having recorded her at various times, and it may be the only way she'll get any money out of me.
Hey,
But she doesn't do any singing on it. But I did, for example, on one song, I asked her to, I'm singing, one of the few times in which I sing on the album is in a song called Wheels Within Wheels, where I sing the third Yoga Sutra, and I'm singing in Sanskrit, but I didn't want it to be too pretentious. So I had her say what I'm singing in English, which is, and then after accomplishing this, the seer abides in its true nature.
When that is accomplished, the seer abides in its own true nature.
And so I have her say that, and then I made her laugh when she was saying it. So, so that's in there. And so there's little vocal snatches of her. But, and then I was like, am I going to credit her with vocals? That's usually singing, but any vocals are vocals.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly.
As a vocalist.
Was the album originally going to be called My Boots Are Already Muddy? Is that the same album?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
How do you know that?
I got some
You have
sources.
ways? Wow, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
It was. It was originally titled that. Yeah.
So why did you change it to Crawling Through Grass?
Uh,
Not a lot of mud and yoga?
I got this image of, well, I was doing, it's actually a track that didn't make it on the album. That was really about a lot of electronic sounds that sounded like insects and birds. And I got this image of just going through on the deep down in, next to the earth and seeing a whole new world there and just going through it. And so that's the basic image that I came up with,
Okay.
Yeah.
And you did a short film based on both extension releases, right? They're included in the short film, right?
Well, I did the Renunciation of Regret. I think that's what you're referring to. Yeah. One of the songs, the Renunciations, is kind of the focus of the film and a performance that Greg and I did of that.
Okay.
And then it's kind of bookended by the 51st Street Shavasana, which is one of the songs on Crawling Through Grass. So that's in it as well. Yeah. And now I've done another film, which I think is superior to that one. But you always like your more recent shit better.
Yeah. Hopefully.
I've done a film for Only Waking for the first song on the album. So
cool.
That's going to be released fairly soon too. But yeah, the 51st Street Shavasana, by the way, has, it's an interesting confluence of people from my life in a way.
Really?
John Freed plays bass on it from the Cucumbers. Norman Westberg plays guitar.
Oh, wow.
Mark C. From Live Skull not only helped me with the engineering of that song, but and I brought it to his studio in Hoboken. But he added a synthesizer to it, and Greg is on it too, and my brother's on the album too, and a Polish woman, Jadwiga Taba, is on one of them as well. So
wow.
it was, but it was good. It was a nice feeling of bringing. I mean, it was during the pandemic. I saw Mark and I were in the studio together, but a lot of that is just the way people are doing this mailing back and forth and all of that stuff. So it's kind of a pastiche of those different influences on that, particularly on the long 51st Street Shavasana.
So what's next for you? Now that things are starting to open up, and we can actually perform things. Is there more extension? Maybe some ritual tension dates? Something completely different?
The ritual tension is still a possibility, but Mark moved out to Easton, Pennsylvania, and
I have family in there.
Yeah, do you?
Yeah, right in Easton. Yeah.
Right. Well, I want to go up and visit him there. But so it became pretty much impossible. Well, it's been COVID anyway. Yeah. And, so we haven't rehearsed or anything for a couple years now. And I don't know, that's kind of up in the air. But I decided because of this, I want to do my solo stuff and be able to just do it by myself. If Greg wants to join me, or if Mark or Mike wants to join in, that's fine. But I I've been doing a lot of the social media kind of stuff, getting it together, but I took a week recently and went up to New Hampshire, just did an Airbnb by myself.
Oh, wow.
And started working on a show. And I want to. It'll be interesting because, like I say, I'm not really an instrumentalist. So the songs from this album, I will be using a controller and a keyboard, and I'm learning piano. So I'll be able to do some of these songs, but I'm also going to use some of the material from the Kiss and from Ritual Attention. So it should be like a combination of those three elements. And I mean, one thing that I know I can do is get people's attention on stage. Yeah. I'm good at that, and I think I'm a pretty competent performer. So I really look forward to booking some dates. We're thinking maybe July. It's Pittsburgh, Philly, and Manhattan and Queens. So
nice.
We'll see where it goes.
Man.
All right.
I mean, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a fascinating chat. I really, really have enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, great questions, and you're easy to talk to.
Oh, thank you very much.
So that's yeah, it's a good role for you.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. Where can people follow you and pick up the albums? Maybe check for those dates up in Philly and New York.
Okay, well, I have an Instagram account at ivan.nahem, and I have a website called On About Now. As I said, my wife is Irish, so she will sometimes say, "What are you on about now?" Yeah. And so I made it my website.
That's great.
So it's just ONABOUTNOW. And you can also go to Arguably Records on Bandcamp and find all the Ritual Attention. And it's actually under the merch there, but I'm not sure whether that's right. But anyway, that has stuff as well. And you can find me. And there's also a Ritual Attention and a Carnival Crash page on Facebook, and Ritual Attention on Instagram. So
awesome.
there you go.
So you got that all covered. Perfect.
Yeah.